Greetings, hunters and masters, and welcome, finally welcome to the top 10 most powerful Elder Dragons of Monster Hunter history. It took me so long to get this work done due to laziness, focus on work, and other things, but finally, it's done. Before we start the list, I just have a couple things to say. Number 1, even though I have studied the lore of Monster Hunter, I am still pretty much a rookie. But that doesn't mean my knowledge is very lacking. Number 2, this top 10 video will be based on lore and have little to do with gameplay, although there are some gameplay aspects that are based on lore. Number 3, this list will not include tempered, arch-tempered, variants, or subspecies Elder Dragons. And number 4, since we are talking about powerful Elder Dragons, obviously I will add Black Dragons, which are Fatalis, Elatrion, and Dimoralis, which means I'm also going to bring up the legend of their lore and determine whether if they are true or not. And one more thing, these 10 Elder Dragons must not only be powerful, but they must also have a reputation of wrecking the ecosystem, which may also lead the end of the world. So that's really all I have to say about this. But before we get to number 10, let's bring up the honorable mentions that could not make it to the list. Number 1, Gargamazios. Gargamazios is incredibly strong and is known to shoot out explosive tar. He's also sometimes known to invade human settlements whenever there is sulfur nearby, which can be found in gunpowder. Gargamazios can be extremely dangerous when he's in the air, shooting out veins of tar. Unfortunately, he doesn't pose that much of a threat because he is a rare occurrence. And that is why he couldn't be on the list despite how powerful and strong he is. Number 2, Kolftaroth. Similar to Gargamazios, Kolftaroth is incredibly strong as she can crush her foes without a second. She can also use her molten gold to burn things down and solidify them. And when she loses her gold mantle, she becomes faster and more mobile. But the issue is, Kolftaroth poses no threat in the ecosystem because she only settles in the caverns of El Dorado, which is why she couldn't make it to the list. On number 3, we have Zoramagdaros. Seriously? No one likes or cares about Zoramagdaros. What makes him so powerful outside of being gigantic and shooting magma out of his mouth and back? You know, let's just replace this Dimoralis ripoff with this Elder Dragon, Versa / Makili Pietru. I know Monster Hunter Stories is just a spin-off and not really part of the main series, but I mean, like, why not? Pietru is the white dragon responsible for the Black Blight, which causes every creature to go berserk. Sounds like the Frenzy Virus to me, only the monsters don't die from the Blight. He can also shoot out godly and dark beams, which are also pretty deadly, I guess. There's honestly not a lot about this Elder Dragon, so moving on to the last honorable mention, which is Valstrax. There's nothing really crazy about Valstrax, but what is crazy is his dive bomb when he lands on the ground at full speed. This can accidentally wreck environments within the explosion. Other than that, Valstrax also shoots out dragon from his wings, which can be pretty handy against Elder Dragons. And these are the honorable mentions. I'm sure there's more, but I have to stop there and say one more thing. This list is not based on facts, but rather is based on my perspective and my speculations. So whatever I say about these 10 Elder Dragons may not be 100% accurate or correct. And because this is my list, my choice of Elder Dragons may differ from yours. So trust me when I say this, if you've played the old Monster Hunter games before and learned about their lore, you won't like what I picked at the end. So stay tuned of that. So that is all I wanted to say. Let's get into number 10. number 10 is Shakuru Magala, the reincarnation of lightness and darkness, and the master of the frenzy virus. This creature is by far one of the deadliest elder dragons to date, and it's only because the frenzy virus can put many monsters to extinct. When a monster gets infected with the frenzy virus, it'll start dying within moments, and then it'll come back to life to go on a blood loss rampage, and then it'll die once again, becoming food for the Magala species. The frenzy virus affects both humans and animals, and will get to the humans very soon, and because it's highly contagious, the frenzy monsters will infect other animals. However, there are some monsters that can overcome the frenzy virus and become stronger and deadlier. These are called apex monsters. Apex monsters are essentially frenzied monsters that not only go on rampages without few days of death, but can also go beyond their absolute limits. Monsters like Deviljho, Tigrex, Diablos, Rajang, and Zeragios are capable of entering apex state. Shakuru Magala secretes a fog of frenzy that pretty much covers the whole area of either the old world or the new world, meaning it has the potential to cause mass extinction to pretty much almost every monster, with the exception of elder dragons. As for humanity, while the humans are not immune to the frenzy virus, the effects are not really the same. If a human gets infected, instead of going berserk, their immune system will suppress, and they'll become even more susceptible to sickness and diseases. Also, there is no cure. However, similar to apex states, humans can also overcome the frenzy virus. And when that happens, the presence of the frenzy virus will go away. But what of the elder dragons, you may ask? We'll get to that, but for right now, let's go over the attributes of Shakuru Magala. Shakuru Magala is incredibly strong, capable of destroying boulders with ease. It will already be strong enough because a juvenile that is Gore Magala is strong enough to break the neck of a Tigrex and destroy part of a mountain without the use of winged arms. Elemental power. Other than the frenzy virus, Shakuru possesses no other elements. During combat, the frenzy virus is also weaponized into explosive grounds and range attacks. There's really not much to say about that. Shakuru Magala has a decent amount of endurance and durability, and although it doesn't have the toughest shell, it's still tough enough to deflect some of its enemies' attacks. As for endurance, there's really not much I can say about it. Moving on to speed, mobility, and agility, Shakuru is aggressively fast, mobile, and somewhat agile. It's known to charge at enemies at full speed non-stop without a second thought. It's also known to jump around a lot in order to avoid taking damage. Despite these incredible feats, the reason why Shakuru Magala can't be anywhere higher than number 10 is because the frenzy virus has no effect against the elder dragons or the variants. Because these creatures have a higher immune system, Shakuru is forced to use physical prowess. If they weren't immune and can also be manipulated, Shakuru would definitely go even higher than number 5. But as of now, he ranks at the 10th most powerful elder dragon. At number 9 is Amatsu Magashi, or essentially Amatsu, the Storm Dragon. In all honesty, Shakuru Magala should have taken 9th place, but the reason why I placed Amatsu higher than Shakuru despite not being as deadly is because Amatsu's powers affect other monsters, including other elder dragons. Amatsu possesses a powerful water element and wind abilities that makes Kushala Daora feel like an air conditioner. Amatsu can also manipulate the weather, which leads to several natural disasters. One of the deadliest storms from Amatsu is the hurricane, which requires no explanation because everyone knows about it. She can also create thunderstorms, excessive heavy rains, landslides, floods, and various other storms that are sky or ground related. Amatsu can also shoot out pressurized water jets out of her body. And trust me, these are not your typical water jets. This is Elder Dragon power we're talking about, and these jets are capable of cutting through mountains with ease. Just look at this blimp for example. There isn't much else to talk about her elemental prowess other than the fact that it comes from an organ that we'll get to once we get to the weaknesses. When it comes to strength, Amatsu isn't physically fit, but given of her size and body weight, she could potentially knock down a monster that is similar of her size. Her speed and mobility aren't impressive either, however she does make up for agility. And the reason I say that is because while Amatsu isn't entirely slow herself, it's her elegance that really gets in the way when it comes to speed. Amatsu is also weak with her endurance and durability. Amatsu can easily get knocked back by any large monster, and she's very easy to bruise. And this could be a huge weakness to her. If Amatsu gets hit too many times, she will fall to the ground and become helplessly and fatally vulnerable. Another weakness comes from her organ called the Storm Vesicle. This organ is where water is produced, and how Amatsu is capable of manipulating weathers and storms. However, if the Storm Vesicle were to be destroyed, Amatsu would no longer produce water or manipulate storms. Amatsu may not be able to move at that moment, which leaves her completely useless. But despite these flaws, Amatsu can mostly hold her own, and can blow you away. Literally. So that's essentially how powerful Amatsu is. Other than her flaws, I can't bring her anywhere higher than number 9, because there are other Elder Dragons way more powerful than her. On number 8, we have Shara Ishvalda, the Old Everworm, and the Earth-Shattering Dragon. Some of you may feel a little disappointed that Shara Ishvalda is at number 8. Honestly, I'm not happy either. He definitely has so much potential to go even higher, but there's something about his powers that say otherwise. Speaking of power, Shara Ishvalda can manipulate vibrations and cause earthquakes, which lead to other disasters. Disasters like landslides, riptides, whirlpools, floods, tsunamis, and possible volcanic eruptions. And since Shara Ishvalda has 2 phases, or 3 if you want to be a little technical here, we gotta address the first. Shara Ishvalda starts off within his rock shell, giving him immense strength and protection from damage. He can also dig underground and pretend to be a weirdly shaped giant rock. So essentially, during that phase, Shara Ishvalda is an espionage, similar to Basilios and Nakarkas. And while he's underground, Shara Ishvalda can use his vibrations with his hand-shaped wings to create sands. These sands are used to not only slow an enemy down, but to erupt if Shara Ishvalda were to land an attack on it. And really, that's the only way that Shara can use his vibration abilities. They're actually quite limited during the first phase. All Shara Ishvalda can rely on is crushing his foes and sometimes roaring at them. Yes, you heard right folks, Shara Ishvalda is the only Elder Dragon to damage his enemies with his roar. And that's all he can pretty much do. The issue is, Shara Ishvalda is extremely slow, and his rock shell isn't indestructible. It's mostly vulnerable on the head and the upper chest, and if it breaks, this will happen. Shara Ishvalda erupts from his shell, entering Phase 2. His roar is even stronger and louder, and because his wings are now free, he can use them for ranged purposes. His fingertips from his wings fire beams of air geysers, and a single geyser is enough to kill a human being. And the amount of force produced makes the air geysers almost completely unblockable. And if it's a monster, especially if it's a heavily armored one, like Gravios, Brachydios, Acantor, etc., Shaba Ishvalda can unleash a larger beam to not only send them flying, but to break through those shells. Shaba Ishvalda can also use his vibration abilities to create more sands without having to go underground. The sands are bound to explode if Shaba Ishvalda lands on them with an attack, roars near them, or lands on them with air geysers. Speaking of which, Shaba Ishvalda can use his air geysers to create a massive spirit bomb whenever the sands are in place, creating a massive explosion. That kind of explosive power can destroy a few locales and part of civilization. The old Everworm has incredible strength, and even without his shell, he can still easily pin down monsters of his size, and he has the capability of destroying the world if not stopped. Unfortunately, Shaba Ishvalda is incredibly slow and has a very low mobility. He's unable to avoid damage or dodge attacks. He can dig underground, but he doesn't do that very often. As for his endurance, it's kind of on the average side, but that doesn't make it great because compared to his stability, on the first phase anyway, it's actually pretty lackluster. I mean, it's higher than both Shakuru and Amatsu, but still, without his shell, Shaba Ishvalda becomes more vulnerable. And again, even though his shell is tough, it's still prone to break if enough damage is dealt. Oh, and going back to his speed, not only is Shaba Ishvalda overall slow, but his attack patterns are easily telegraphed. This gives humans and monsters a great opportunity to dodge and go for a counterattack. Monsters with wings and speed can also give Shaba Ishvalda a hard time. And that about covers Shaba Ishvalda. Again, Shaba Ishvalda has great potential to be higher than number 8, but despite having the ability to manipulate earthquakes and use vibration abilities, other than reasoning that there are other Elder Dragons way more powerful than Shaba Ishvalda, there's this one Elder Dragon, a flagship monster dare I say, that totally surpasses Shaba Ishvalda. And trust me, you guys aren't going to be too happy about my choice, but then again, this is my list. If you guys were expecting Nergigante to be on number 7, then you are dead wrong. The number 7 spot belongs to Volcana, the Iceborne Wyvern. Before I go over Volcana, I just want to say a few things about Nergigante not being on the list. Nergigante would not come close to being on the list even if I wanted to pick him. The reasons are, 1. Nergigante is an opportunist Elder Dragon. Yes, he does eat Elder Dragons, but he only hunts for the weakened ones. Number 2, Nergigante isn't the most destructive compared to most other Elder Dragons when it comes to being life-threatening to the ecosystem. But what about when Nergigante destroys Igneous with a dive bomb, you may ask? Oh please, Deviljho can do the same thing. Lejang can do it as well. Acantor can do it, Yukenlos can do it, Shakuru Magala, Shengoren, Shakuru, Diablos, and even Atao God, who is crazy strong, can do the same thing with minimum effort. Look, even though Nergigante is stronger than some Elder Dragons, it's still not enough for me to place him on the list, especially when he loses stamina. And that's my third reason. Nergigante has to constantly hunt for Elder Dragons due to having a crazy appetite in order to gain a large quantity of bioenergy, which is part of his stamina. Okay, I'm done talking about Nergigante. So now we're going to get to Volcana and why I place Volcana on number 7. Volcana possesses the ice element that can literally freeze anything and has incredible speed. Volcana is also an invader, which plays a major part of her endurance. Starting with ice, again, is so cold it can literally freeze anything, from small monsters like the Korthos and the Wall, to large monsters like the Anjanath and the Rathalos. While it may not be absolute zero temperature, it's definitely close. But other than freezing things, Volcana has plenty of abilities that she can do with ice. The first ability is forming ice into various shapes of objects, from ice walls to icicles to literal giant balls of ice spikes. This is done by secreting crystallized ice particles and shooting ice beams, another ability that we'll get to soon. The ice structures can be used both offensively and defensively. The ice walls can be used to deflect attacks from her enemies or to slow her monsters down, especially the larger ones. Volcana can form icicles, balls of ice spikes, and ice balls from the sky. This ability is useful as most monsters will focus on her instead of what's above them, unless if they're pretty well observant and swift. But should they get hit, the icicles and the ice spikes will pierce through flesh depending on the sharpness, and the ice balls will crush their bones. Volcana can also create structures of ice, like the ice barrier, which can deliberately block a particular area of a path, or an ice igloo, which can literally entrap a human or a creature, forcing them to starve and freeze to death. There are many things that Volcana can create with ice, but we're just going to move on to the next ability. And that ability is the Ice Armor. The Ice Armor not only mitigates the damage to Volcana, but it also enhances her powers. And that's it. That's all it can do. Actually, I have one more thing to say about it. Sometimes when Volcana holds back and takes some damage, she will become more serious by unleashing her Ice Armor and finishing off her threat. Moving on to our next ability is to manipulate the cold wind. This is done to send the small monsters flying and to drive away the larger monsters to another area. Large monsters can also be sent flying, depending on the size and weight, and the strength of the wind. Moving on to the next ability is the Ice Puddle. Volcana can release ice puddles by simply breathing super chill liquid on the ground. Any individual stepping on it will get stuck and have little to no chance of escaping it. And the ones that do escape will have already lost their legs, and they'll start bleeding to death. Although, of course, for larger monsters, this won't be as much of an issue for them. However, during the sequence, Volcana has one of the two choices: to either fly away and let them suffer, be bait, or starve to death, or bleed to death, or to finish them off with a tail stab or an ice beam. Either one does not matter to Volcana as long as she's done with her foes. Her next and deadliest ability is that one, her Ice Beam. That's her deadliest ability. And the reason why the Ice Beam is considered to be the deadliest ability is because it has the capability of literally freezing anything and transforming any ice into different shapes with the help of ice crystals. Even if the Ice Beam does not kill the individual, if the individual still gets hit on the arm or the leg, it will lose a lot of blood cells and become in agony and wither in pain. Onto her last ability, Volcana can create and control blizzards, ice storms, snowstorms, and hailstorms. Out of all the storms, the hailstorm may be the least dangerous, But just remember that we're talking about Elder Dragon power of ice, so it's very likely that the hailstorm will be even deadlier. Volcana can also combine these storms, which may lead to mass extinction. This affects the plants, which also leads to death of the herbivores and the following of the predators, and this may also affect some Elder Dragons, although there are a few monsters that don't require eating meat or plants, like Kushala Daoba and Oregon for example. So if Volcana isn't stopped, she could put an end to the world. So that's basically her elemental prowess, but what about her strength? It's very low. It's not even lackluster low, it's just very low. Out of all the Elder Dragons on the list, Volcana is by far the physically weakest one. But that doesn't make her overall weak, because even though Volcana is not strong, she is incredibly fast and agile. Volcana can fly at the speed of a Legiana, one of the fastest flying wyverns. Actually, you know what, scratch that. Volcana can outspeed a flock of Legiana. A Legiana is known as the wind-drifting wyvern, capable of moving as fast as a speeding wind. So even though Volcana isn't as fast as Kirin, because obviously Kirin can teleport and can move as fast as thunder, compared to most other Elder Dragons, except for Valstrax, that's still pretty fast. And Volcana is extremely agile, capable of dodging most attacks from other enemies. Mostly. Volcana is also fast enough to dodge and then follow up with an attack, and also spam Ice Breath after Ice Breath. So Volcana is that fast, especially against many other monsters. But how goes her endurance and durability? Well, starting with her durability, it's pretty much on the lackluster side, only being slightly enhanced with ice armor. And even that isn't good enough. Her scales are more brittle and rigid than they are tough, and the ice armor can only last for so long, only lasting for about a few hits. However, her endurance is actually surprisingly high. Look, I'm not saying that Volcana is as much of a tough cookie as the likes of Kovtarov, Gogmazias, Lao Shenlong, Sedeus, Jen Moran, Darin Moran, or Shengaran. But here are 3 factors of why I say that her endurance is high. Being an invader, turf wars with variants, and the Iceborne story. Volcana is one of the few Elder Dragons that can invade almost every locale and take over every monster's territories, ranging from tundras, forests, hot deserts, outer volcanoes, and rotted areas. Volcana has turf war encounters with the following variants: Seething Bazalgase, Savage Deviljho, Furious Rajang, Black Velvet Hazak, and her rival, Ruiner Nergigante. During the story of Iceborne, Volcana clashes against a group of hunters at Celiana, and...
Did he just activate a
He can fly!
Oh, so yeah! He can bloody fly!
Alright, everyone come in, it's safe now, I guess! Wait!
You can fly!
Why is it just hitting it?
Alright, look, we're not gonna go there and talk about the continuity error. Also, yes, Volcana can fly over pretty much anything, but the plot says otherwise. Anyway, outside of the error of continuity, Volcana can tank up pretty much anything that the hunters can throw at her. From multiple cannon shots, 100 plus ballista bolts.
Oh my god, it's a minigun ballista! And I can move one! I'm doing a strafing ballista minigun run!
Slashes and bullets from hunters, and a dragon razor to the chest that could have fatally destroyed her heart.
Yeah, almost. Let's fire the missile! Boom! Oh my god!
It's an explosive Dragonator! It's like slicing ammo Dragonator!
Launched itself! Why is she okay?
Because plot armor, Josh. Plot armor. After getting hit, Volcana retreated with no fatal injuries and quickly replenished herself. If you guys don't believe that Nergigante is tougher than Volcana, let me tell you this. Nergigante has only taken like 12 ballista bolts during the Zora Magdaros siege, and had a few encounters with the Huntsman, only having his spikes trimmed. Now I know I sound like I'm saying Volcana is Black Dragon level, which isn't really the case. She's nowhere as close. She has this one big weakness that prevents her from going even higher than where she already is. And that weakness comes from the ice armor. If Volcana takes too many hits, or enough heavy hits, she will collapse to the ground, helplessly trying to get back up. That's the only major flaw of Volcana, but it doesn't work if she's not using ice armor. So that's how powerful Volcana is, but we're not done there because you guys still want to know how Volcana is higher than Ishvalda. So, do you remember when I said that fast flyers can be a huge issue for Ishvalda? This is what I meant when I placed Volcana on number 7. Volcana can not only fly, but she can also move fast and stay airborne for as long as she likes. Just remember that the power of Ishvalda only affects the land and the ocean, but not the air. If I were to place monsters like Taroth or Gargamatios over Volcana, for example, and place them on number 7, they would absolutely get decimated because they are both land monsters. Yes, Gargamatios can fly, but his tail would have to get loose in order to freely use his wings. The ice may not be able to break Ishvalda's rocks unless if it's a giant ice ball, but it's cold enough to go through the rocks and hit his body. That will force Ishvalda to emerge from his armor, unless if he receives a fatal brain freeze. If that happens, Ishvalda will lose a brain and die, and that is my reason why Volcana is placed on number 7. Overall, Volcana is an Elder Dragon that a lot of people seem to underestimate. Volcana can freeze things, she can move extremely fast, she's not as squishy as a lot of people think she is. Even though Volcana is not at the level of Black Dragons, I believe she can hold her own, at most cases. Coming on number 6 is Nakarkus. This Elder Dragon is one of a kind, and I say this because this thing can use powers from dead monsters. But before we get to that, we need to talk about its own abilities. Nakarkus fires mucus from his body that is not only disgusting, but also extremely sticky. In fact, it's so sticky it causes humans and creatures to get stuck to pretty much anything, including piles of bones. Nakarkus can also use the mucus to coat itself into gigantic skeletons as a source of protection. And it covers its own tentacles with mucus to stick to a pile of bones, tricking enemies into thinking that they're fighting a two-headed undead dragon. With it, Nakarkus can act as an espionage, similar to Ishvalda. For the second ability, Nakarkus utilizes Dragon, but we'll be saving that for last. Whenever a Nakarkus eats alive or dead monsters, it adapts to their natural abilities and uses them in combat, ranging from an Uragan Chen to crush and stun enemies, like Gaiakur's lightning crystals to paralyze and electrocute, Lavena's parts to ignite fire, and a Brachydios slime.
How he killed a Brachydios, I don't know, because Brachydios is supreme.
Shut up, Josh. Brachydios isn't that powerful. Anyway, other than the 4 that I just brought up, Nakarkus may possess abilities from other monsters that we may not know about. He might have something like a Thunder Beam from a Jang, or a Glittering Ice from a Legiana. Whatever the case, monster consumption can make Nakarkus even more deadly, but not as deadly as the Dragon element. Dragon is so deadly, even Nakarkus is in danger of it. And because Dragon is so self-harming, Nakarkus can only use it when it's truly meeting its own fate. So in order for Nakarkus to mitigate self-damage, it fires Dragon Beams from its tentacles while building up a larger one from its mouth. Although the beams from the tentacles aren't as powerful as the ones from the mouth, they can still easily kill enemies. They can also be used to shoot down nearby airships from afar. And when it fires a Dragon Beam from its mouth, well, it can destroy pretty much anything that it touches.
Run! Okay, over here. Item pouch. Oh no, it's coming! Dive!
With this monstrosity of a beam, it is stated that Nakarkis can destroy an ecosystem and possibly an island. So because how dangerous Nakarkis can be, it is almost unchallenged by many other monsters, only being surpassed by Sedeus. I'm sorry, hold the phone for a moment! A cuttlefish monster who literally fires a beam of death gets surpassed by a mere whale dragon who moves way slower than this thing and takes way longer to charge up a water beam. I mean, just look at Sedeus. How can a Sedeus be a predator to Nakarkis, let alone higher than Nakarkis? This whale dragon doesn't have carnivorous teeth or that kind of power level. I mean, Nakarkis can shoot dragon from his tentacles. Surely Sedeus is weak to dragon, right? But that's still not enough. I guess Nakarkis was made to have a kryptonite of Sedeus. To what avail exactly? Because of the endemic life of the animal kingdom? Let me tell you something. BULLSHIT! I'm just gonna move on and forget I even ranted about this. So, we already talked about what Nakarkis can do with his abilities, but how strong is it? Its strength? If I had to make an educated guess, it would range from above average to decent. There's really no telling how physically powerful Nakarkis is without it using monster abilities. However, what is told about Nakarkis is it can move incredibly fast. Similar to squids, Nakarkis has jet propulsions that it uses to either keep its distance, avoid damage, or retreat back to its nest, the wyvern's end. Although Nakarkis can move fast, it lacks agility. I did say it can avoid damage, but that's because of the jets. It's not like Swifty or Jumpy of an aquatic creature. But despite not having a lot of agility, it does move around a lot. Okay, but how tough is Nakarkis? What says its durability and endurance? I'll start with durability, and as much as I want to say is pretty high, if we ignore the armor worn by Nakarkis, it's actually extremely low. Without protection from the bones, Nakarkis' skin is soft and squishy, where in contrast of its endurance, it's kind of on the above average side because Nakarkis has to endure the excruciating pain from Dragon while defending its territory. So that's pretty much all the aspects of strength for Nakarkis, but what about its weaknesses? Nakarkis has two major weaknesses, and I've already talked about one of them, which is Dragon. But why is it that Nakarkis is so weak to Dragon outside of being an Elder Dragon? Well, there's actually a theory that explains a lot of it, a theory about what Dragon really is. Essentially, many Elder Dragons do possess Dragon in a particular organ. However, only a few numbers are capable of weaponizing it, and Nakarkis is one of them. So because Dragon is an ultimate weapon against Elder Dragons, they tend to avoid any area that contains Dragon, like Dracophage bugs or Dragonfell berries. And if Elder Dragons are highly intelligent, they are more likely to become sentient to the element. Sentient meaning more likely to feel the power of Dragon. Within that case, this can be extremely dangerous to the mindset of Elder Dragons, especially when they use an excessive amount of Dragon. So because Nakarkis is so intelligent and is using so much Dragon, it will lose its mindset and go corrupt. So corrupt that it dies from its own element.
You! I'm just gonna kill him, okay? That's what is gonna happen here.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's so nice.
Yeah, he lets out a dying little beast.
By the way, you can look for my answers about the Dragon element made by Rage Gaming himself, or Josh, link in the description below. Onto the secondary weakness, which comes from the squishy skin of Nakarkis. As stated earlier, Nakarkis is left vulnerable when it's not coated in something tough and sturdy, meaning it can be easily bruised. If it were to confront against other monsters and humans with no protection, it would most likely lose most of its limbs and bleed to death. So that's another second weakness. Another reason that Nakarkis is left on number 6, it may not be a weakness, but it has something to do with monster adaptation. So Nakarkis is heavily known to adapt abilities from other monsters, but it's not known if Nakarkis could do the same thing to Elder Dragons. If it were to do that to Elder Dragons, it would sit higher, possibly at number 5, heck, it might even sit at number 4 at best. But because it doesn't happen, and because it's not been confirmed, it's being sit where it's at number 6. Overall, Nakarkis is an Elder Dragon that can stick things with his mucus, and whereas armor, it can also use powers from other monsters and destroy things with its dragon element. Due to the possession of these abilities, this makes Nakarkis unchallenged, unless Asadeus is around. Listen, I don't care if it's part of the lore, I still can't accept it and I won't get over it either. But there is one Elder Dragon next on the list that surpasses both Sadeus and Nakarkis, and that Elder Dragon is one of the 3 Black Dragons, or 5 if you want to be a little technical here. That's right, hunters, it is Dimoralis, the smelting black dragon. Yes, I know it's a little anticlimactic to place a black dragon, well, one of the black dragons, on number 5, but I have various reasons why Dimoralis is on that list. Also, because we are talking about a black dragon, we gotta bring up his lore because some of the legends may be true, false, or inconclusive. To start off, let's talk about the first legend that states that Dimoralis is immortal and can be revived. The reason behind that is because of his heart. Dimoralis can come back to life from his heart. Even if it's removed from his body, Dimoralis can regrow from his heart. However, there will be no immortality if the heart is severely injured or destroyed. So to answer the question whether if the legend is true, false, or inconclusive, it is confirmed that Dimoralis is in fact immortal because the heart keeps him alive, at least when it's active and not damaged. On to legend number 2, this legend states that Dimoralis can summon meteors. Okay, to be fair, this legend seems to be way weaker than the first one. No, I'm not saying that this legend is false or just a rumor, but just let me explain. Allegedly, Dimoralis can summon meteors by simply launching magma balls into the sky and hitting the meteors. Although this legend is true, there are 2 issues that I have with it. Number 1, whenever the magma balls are being launched into the Earth's atmosphere, they are conflicting against gravity and air resistance. Gravity and air resistance will reduce the acceleration of the magma balls, preventing them from even entering the first part of the atmosphere. Number 2, even if the magma balls do enter the atmosphere and manage to hit the meteors, when the meteors hit Earth, no, even before when the meteors hit Earth, what they'll do is vaporize, burn out, and turn into a shooting star. So in reality, it is extremely rare for the meteors to land on Earth. What's falling from the sky then? Most likely the magma balls that fell to enter atmospheres. How would I know? Because meteors are larger, deal more damage, and have more impact than magma balls. So even though this legend isn't false, it had to be debunked because, logically, it is rare for meteors to cause rain of death. The only monster with better summoning skills and better control of meteors is Crimson Fatalis. Let's just forget about the meteors and talk about what makes Dimoralis so powerful. First, I'll go over strength. Dimoralis is incredibly strong, one of the strongest monsters in existence. Dimoralis can easily crush other monsters with at least 1 or 2 slams, and can also easily destroy mountains and other environments. Dimoralis is also powerful because, obviously, he's a black dragon. What What do you want? Essentially, Dimoralis possesses magma so hot it can literally burn anything to extinction and boil oceans. Don't get the wrong idea though. Dimoralis can't boil the whole ocean. If he could, then there wouldn't be any water at all. Dimoralis can only boil things within his range, which is estimated to be about 2,500 meters. Don't take my words for it because there's no actual calculation of what the range of the heatness is, so I might be wrong here. However, range aside, I wager the intense heatness is hot enough to boil living things alive, especially monsters that have high resistance to fire and heatness. Dimoralis can also cause a raining apocalypse by launching magma balls in the sky. Although they don't have as much impact as meteors, they can still be very deadly. And because Dimoralis produces unlimited magma, he can pretty much shoot up magma balls non-stop. Dimoralis can also shoot out a fireball from his mouth, but honestly, any creature can dodge it. Another thing that makes Dimoralis so powerful is how tanky he is. Dimoralis possesses both exceptional durability and endurance. When Dimoralis is critically injured or close to death, he can harden his already tough skin to make them indestructible. Almost indestructible. Even without armor mode, the skin is still tough for swords and claws to cut through. So that's how powerful Dimoralis is. But why did I place him on number 5 despite him being a black dragon? I have two answers for that question. Firstly, outside of having weakness from his cores, especially from his chest where his heart is located, due to being so chunky and large, Dimoralis is extremely slow and not agile and very low mobile. Sure, Dimoralis might be a little faster when he's in water, but Dimoralis is extremely rare, so we don't know how fast he might actually be. So due to being so slow and very low agile, he is prone to take damage. Obviously he's a tough cookie, but if he were to encounter a monster that is not only extremely fast, but can also offer a great deal of DPS, he might get into real trouble. Like Volcana for example. Yes, I know Volcana isn't exactly Black Dragon level, but I believe she might give Dimoralis a bit of a rundown. Given that she can create a giant ice sphere from the sky, she can put Dimoralis to the ground and hit his chest with an ice beam or ice spikes. So that's my first answer. My second answer is the next Elder Dragon for number 4. If there's one particular Elder Dragon that can exceed Dimoralis and possibly rival against other Black Dragons, it is none other than the world's largest monster. Yes, hunters, Delamador. Literally the world's largest and world's strongest monster in Monster Hunter existence. I'm deliberately starting over with his strength because it's just that simple. He can literally destroy things by simply slithering through them. Villages, forests, volcanoes, castles, fortresses, kingdoms, you name them. As for large monsters, he can just simply pick them up with his mouth, body, or tail, ragdoll them, and just throw them across the world. That is it about his strength, nothing else to talk about. Moving on to his powers. Delamador can shoot out a giant fire breath that will incinerate anything that touches it. He can also summon blue meteors, but how he does it is unknown. But when they are summoned and land on the ground, they will stay on the ground for mere moments and eventually explode, dealing a great amount of damage. Some people would say that blue fire is hotter than regular fire. I mean, if you want to be a little scientific about it, then yes, blue fire can technically be hotter than regular fire, but that doesn't necessarily make it the hottest fire to date. Anyways, moving on to another natural ability from Delamador, are the Fangs of Paralysis. Delamador can easily paralyze any living creature with just one bite. The effects are not infinite, but they will last for indefinite amounts of time, which gives Delamador more than enough time to just kill them. Delamador is also a tanky boy, just like Dimoralis, only leaving his durability kind of average. Not to say his skin is very soft, but it's still soft enough to be cut through. But because of how colossal Delamador is, his endurance is just massive. He might just be the tankiest monster to date, even tankier than a god of all monsters. However, because he is so massive, he does falter when it comes to speed. Not to say that he's very slow, I mean he kinda is, but what I'm trying to get at is he's a little bit more predictable due to his size. Also, his mobility is very low when it comes to attack speed. That doesn't mean Delamador is entirely slow. He might very well be faster than the likes of Dimoralis, Lao Shenlong, and Magdaros. But then again, we don't know how fast Delamador can actually be, so I'll just leave it at that. Now, as overwhelmingly strong as Delamador is, he's obviously not indestructible or unstoppable. Delamador has a weakness of taking a short rest after performing a powerful attack. Anytime Delamador does a striking bite or fire breath, he takes a little break for a short period of time. This isn't really that much of an issue, unless a black dragon is involved. At least if that black dragon isn't Dimoralis. Let me explain why Delamador would 100% dominate Dimoralis. The raining apocalypse from the magma balls won't hurt Delamador because they don't have enough impact. Even if they do hurt, they won't easily put down Delamador, as Delamador is obviously really tanky. The intense heatness won't do much either, as Delamador has very high tolerance of heat damage. Also, Delamador will bite Dimoralis and flare around while Dimoralis is helpless. And while Delamador is biting Dimoralis, Dimoralis is paralyzed, so he won't be able to launch magma balls. Again, not that they would do much anyway. And Delamador will either throw away Dimoralis or destroy him, regardless if Dimoralis dies or survives. And that is why I believe that Delamador is over Dimoralis. But even though Delamador is strong enough to rival against the Black Dragons, strength is not everything to make a monster so powerful. The only reason why I placed Delamador on number 4 is because he is literally the strongest and largest monster. And that's as far as I can bring him, because outside of strength not always being key, Delamador isn't the most threatening monster. Yes, he's large, yes, he's strong, but Delamador isn't intentionally destroying things. He's just going about his business. And that is why Delamador is being stopped at number 4. Before I reveal the next Elder Dragon, I just want to say that I have had struggles with deciding which one of the 3 would be number 3, number 2, or number 1. And the reason I was struggling so much was because these 3 Elder Dragons are capable of dominating monsters and destroying the world. However, after reanalyzing and going over 3 powerful Elder Dragons, I came to the final conclusion. The next Elder Dragon going on number 3 is none other than Elatrion. Yes, hunters, Elatrion, being on number 3. I know, it's a little odd considering that I believe that Elatrion was the god of all monsters. Was I being fake about it? Did I have a change of mind about it? Well, the thing is, I had to keep analyzing Elatrion and 2 other Elder Dragons, and came with the result that both of them are higher than Elatrion. Don't get the wrong idea though, I still believe Elatrion can take on every monster, including quite possibly the god of all monsters. And I'll explain that right before we get to number 2, but as of right now we need to focus on Elatrion. And since this is another black dragon, we need to bring up legends as well. But before I do that, there's something that I have to address. There are 2 different versions of Elatrion, one of the old world and one that came to the new world. The Elatrion of the old world is older, larger, and only possesses 4 elements, which are fire, thunder, ice, and dragon. Old world Elatrion also possesses 2 modes, which are ground mode and flight mode. During ground mode, Elatrion only possesses fire and dragon, and sometimes can use thunder as well, whereas in flight mode, Elatrion can only use ice and thunder. However, the Elatrion that traveled to the new world is younger, slightly smaller, and has a mastery of all 5 elements, which are fire, thunder, ice, dragon, and water. And unlike the one from the old world, the new world Elatrion possesses 3 modes that are based on elements, which are fire active, ice active, and the deadliest, dragon active. Now that might be a speculation, or it may have been a gameplay mechanic in the past. Either way, I'm using the Elatrion for Iceborne so that people won't get confused of which Elatrion I'm using. So with that out of the way, let's talk about legend number 1, the scales of Elatrion. This legend states that Elatrion's scales are so tough that if a monster's claw or if a sword were to cut them and they're not sharp enough, they will shatter. Another legend states that Elatrion can swim and live in the deepest part of the ocean. This means that whatever Elatrion can do while underwater can cause a massive disaster. But just bear in mind that these legends are just rumors and have not been confirmed to be true or false. The only legend that is true is the mastery of all 5 elements. If the underwater legend was confirmed and Elatrion can cause a disaster there, that may have placed him on number 2 instead of number 3. But because Elatrion is the most mysterious out of all the black dragons, I'm just gonna leave it there and talk about his strength. Elatrion is incredibly strong as a black dragon, capable of creating a giant hole and destroying a mountain. But he is also the weakest of the black dragons. That's not to say Elatrion is so weak that he can't physically hurt them, but compared to Fatalis, species of Fatalis, and Dimoralis, he is ranked the lowest. So how then can Elatrion be this strong? Well, it's because of the dragon element. Dragon acts as a power-up for both his physical attacks and his elemental attacks, except for water though. Every physical attack that Elatrion performs will always emit Dragon, which will not only boost his muscle mass, but will also overcome many of the monsters that dare to challenge him. And now moving on to elemental prowess. Elatrion is so elementally powerful, he is also very unstable, especially when he enters Dragon active mode. And because it's the deadliest mode, we'll save that for last and talk about the other elements as well as fire/ice active. So let's start off with fire. Fire can only be used during fire active mode. Elatrion can shoot out a fire breath, fireball, and a fiery explosion from the ground. Elatrion is also given fire and heat immunity, although he is already immune to heatness because he settles in volcanoes. Next element is ice, which can only be used through ice active mode. Ice is as deadly as it is cold, very close to absolute 0 temperature. Elatrion can use it as an ice breath, ice shards, and can shoot a breeze of ice in the air to form more falling ice shards. When they get hit by thunder, they will release red lightning and explode. Speaking of thunder, Elatrion can use thunder regardless of what mode he enters. Elatrion uses thunder from his head, not from his horns, from his head. And if anything were to latch onto his head, they will become fried up and fall off. And then we have water, which can also be used regardless of what mode, but Elatrion can only use it when he's flying. While he's in the air, Elatrion can use water as a beam or just spit it to the ground. It's obviously not very potent, and yet I still don't know why it deals so much damage during gameplay. but it does have an unusual purpose that involves fire. Yes, you guessed it, water from Elatrion isn't exactly water, it's actually an oily substance. When that water substance catches on fire, it will spread around the area and pretty much burn everything within its range. And lastly, the dragon element. As I said before, dragon acts as a power booster as it increases the potency of fire, ice, and thunder. With fire, dragon increases the temperature and makes it so that fire-resistant monsters become no longer resistant. With ice, dragon forms ice shards from the air. And with thunder, dragon increases the voltage of lightning. And once time passes by, when Elatrion isn't either fire active or ice active, he will enter dragon active mode. And while he's entering that mode, he unleashes a shockwave of dragon. Dragon active mode is the mode that makes Elatrion so deadly and unstable because Elatrion is capable of using all 5 elements during this mode. This also weaponizes the dragon element even further by using them as shockwaves. The reason why dragon active mode is both deadly and unstable is because Elatrion cannot remain in that mode for too long. Even though dragon doesn't cause too much problems or harm to Elatrion, Elatrion just simply cannot control it. So as time passes by, Elatrion switches to a different mode in the most chaotic way by violently unleashing his deadliest attack, Eschaton Judgment. Massive destruction, capable of putting an ecosystem to extinction and destroying land. Now let's talk about speed. And Elatrion is insanely fast, possibly on the top 3 fastest monsters of Monster Hunter. And to be honest with you guys, I don't really need to describe how fast Elatrion is, because you guys will obviously know that already. So I'm just gonna move straight to toughness, endurance, and durability. Elatrion has incredible endurance, not as crazy as Delamador's or Dimoralis' endurance, but still he is no easy task. His durability is also incredible because his skills are said to be tough, possibly even tougher than Fatalis' skin. Possibly, not definitely. So that is Elatrion. He is quite deadly with his powers, but could not make it to number 1. And why is that exactly? Well, it has something to do with elemental weaknesses based on modes, and the Eschaton Judgment. You see, Elatrion has a particular elemental weakness based on what mode he is in, and that will gradually affect the Eschaton Judgment. During Fire Active mode, Elatrion is weak to Ice and Water. During Ice Active mode, Elatrion is weak to Fire and Thunder. During Dragon Active mode, Elatrion is pretty weak to anything, especially Dragon. So if Elatrion gets hit too many times from the opposite element, the Eschaton Judgment won't be disabled, but instead it'll be reduced, and Elatrion will fall to the ground. And when Elatrion uses the Eschaton Judgment, it will not be as deadly as it was because the potency has been reduced. But honestly, that won't be that big of an issue considering that Elatrion can move fast and avoid damage. Overall, Elatrion, despite not hitting number 1, is a literal walking disaster. Whatever action he performs, chaos will prevail. Since we're done talking about Elatrion, we are now moving on to number 2. The next Elder Dragon I'm about to reveal to you is going to piss you guys off. And for what emotion you're about to feel, I am both sorry and not sorry at the same time. So, here goes nothing. I am so gonna receive a lot of backlash for this. Yes, I know, you guys aren't happy that Fatalis isn't number 1. Trust me, I'm not doing this just to get you guys ticked off, nor am I trying to convince you that he isn't number 1. If you still want to believe that Fatalis cannot be defeated, taken over, or dominated, all rights to you. You have every rights to believe that. I'm not going to try to stop you or change your mind. But just remember that this list is not based on facts or opinions, but rather my perspective and speculations. Not everything I say or do is 100% true or accurate, so please don't get too mad. As for people who would say something like this, you don't understand! Fatalis can make every creature be scared of him! Or, Fatalis can absorb humans and monsters! Or, Fatalis is immortal! Or, something like this!
He wiped out nearly all of civilization in the Great Dragon War. He is the end and the all, the Alpha and the Omega, the top of the totem pole. He is the end of the world!
Urge to kill rising.
Listen, I know why you guys would say something like that, and I am 100% aware of Fatalis' lore, and I really understand why you guys don't believe it, because no other monster has taken the place of Fatalis. However, there is a line between researching and coming up with a valid conclusion, and believing everything about something and saying that it's either true or fake, while providing very little evidence or without providing any evidence at all. And as for others who would say something like this, just wait until the Iceborne update. Everything will be explained eventually and then you'll understand. Listen, by the time the Fatalis update comes out, the video will already be out right before the explanation happens. Sorry to break it to you, but I've been delaying this video for over 9 months and I'm not waiting any longer anymore. But here, I'll make it up to you. When Fatalis comes out and everything starts being explained, I'll see if my answer gets changed. But as of right now, this is where my guard stands, and I have to do this regardless of how you guys feel. So with all that time wasted, let's just start off with the strength of Fatalis. How strong is Fatalis? Back in the old generations of Monster Hunter, Fatalis barely represented his physical prowess. All he ever did was slap the ground to make a not so big hole and make an attempt to crush his hunters. And his body shape looked like as if Fatalis hasn't been eating enough meat, which made it really difficult for me to determine how strong Fatalis can actually be. However, thanks to Iceborne and the return of Fatalis, I now get to see the glimpse of his strength. Fatalis can be seen emerging from a bridge and walking through towers effortlessly as if they weren't even there. That's how strong Fatalis can truly be. He may not be as strong as Dimoralis or Delamador of all monsters, but he's still up there. Now we'll be talking about the power of Fatalis alongside with his legends that may or may not be true. We'll start out with his main weapon, fire, and the first legend, wearing humans and monsters as extra protection.
When Fatalis defeats a hunter, what he does is he melts them down with his Inferno scale hell breath. And then what he does...
It's just fire breath. Just call it fire breath.
It's Inferno scale hell breath.
Fire breath.
It's Inferno scale hell breath.
Okay, first of all, Josh, no one ever calls it the Inferno scale hell breath. Not even the devs gave it that name. Second of all, fire doesn't necessarily melt humans or other creatures. It turns them into ash. But it's Elder Dragon fire. Still, that's not how fire works.
Then he takes the goop created by his Inferno scale hell breath. That's just like flesh, bones, armor, and all of that.
Yeah, most people would call that ash.
Yeah, and no, not ash. It's liquid. He liquefies dead hunters.
Wait, what?
And then he'll take that armor, messy, fleshy goop, and he'll lather it on himself and let it harden to increase the strength of his hide. But also, you know how we hunters gain power through our armor, like the decorations and the skills and such? Yeah. Well, that's what he do too. He absorbs the strength of our armor.
Okay.
By lathering it on himself.
Again, what? Okay, look, there's no confirmation or observation of Fatalis absorbing hunters or monsters or anything after melting them to further protect himself and become even stronger. there's no evidence to even back it up. If it was true, then every part of Fatalis would be indestructible, even more indestructible than the hide of Dimoralis. Also, the decoration thing is just gameplay. Hunters aren't capable of, I don't know, shooting a beam or something. Honestly, I think this is the only legend that I find to be exaggerating and not very true. But outside of that legend, his actual firepower is not something to be laughed at or underestimated. The fire breath of Fatalis can burn down structures of castles and siege weapons, like the Dragonators. And while Fatalis is flying, he can put the world to extinction by causing massive hellfires. Does it make Fatalis an extremely powerful and dangerous monster? Yes and no. And the reason I gave it a yes and no answer is because although Fatalis is worthy enough to pretty much wreck anything, I hate to say it, but compared to what monsters like Delamador, Dimoralis, and Elatrion, and maybe even the Carcass can do, it's a tiny bit lackluster. Fatalis can't destroy everything by simply burning it to the ground. It can't even reach the core of the earth. I'm sorry, but fire isn't the most destructive or powerful element. You know what it is, though? Hip check. Okay, moving on. On to legend number 2, we have Fatalis making every living creature scared of him.
We are literally fighting him in the rotting corpse of an entire kingdom that he made his nest after wiping out. It is a fact that every monster that gets within miles of here has this just unnatural sense to turn around and flee, and none have been observed to escape that effect.
I absolutely hate when people say that something is a fact where they haven't even found enough evidence or haven't even confirmed it. Unless if you count that claustrophobic orb, which I believe it may have been caused by white Fatalis, just stop saying, it's true, it's a thing, it's a fact, when there's no actual confirmation. It's still a legend, so it may not be true. Also, if you're gonna bring up the Lao Shan Lung running away from Fatalis, that won't help your argument either, as it's more rumor than it is true. Either Lao Shan Lung lost his way to wherever he came from, or Lao Shan Lung does run away from Fatalis, but only because it's a prey to Fatalis. Either way, I see nothing else to back up the legend. Even if Fatalis does possess that ability to scare every monster, it can't just be a passive thing. Fatalis would have to reach a certain point in order to activate it. And no, I don't mean transformation into a crimson or white Fatalis. I mean something like when Fatalis becomes enraged, or when he feels like he's about to go down. Other than that, there's really nothing else for me to say about this.
Be more impressed, it's f***ing Fatalis!
The only legend that I happen to find true is the immortality of Fatalis and the essence of his gear, with the exception of people transforming into another Fatalis.
If you wear his armor, it keeps growing after death. You can't really truly kill him. Even one of his scales will slowly grow back into a new Fatalis. So hunters wearing his armor eventually go missing because it encases them and sends them insane, and they run off into the wilds to slowly turn into a fresh Fatalis.
Do we have proof of this?
Yes, Cotton, we actually do have some proof to back it up. Like this one. Inside the cave of Poke Village, there is a giant Fatalis greatsword that has been sitting around for years. If a piece were to be chipped away, the weapon will regenerate itself, and as time moves by, the weapon will also continue growing, possibly into another Fatalis. And then you have Crimson Fatalis. Anytime Crimson Fatalis gets defeated and slain, he will revive himself and evolve into a fiery demon. But that's not all there is to it, because this legend gets way darker than that. Weapons and armor from Fatalis aren't just alive, they are also dangerous and forbidden to use. Starting with armor, legend states that if any living creature were to wear the skin of Fatalis, it will either die or disappear without notice. The armor is also said to give out unsettling nightmares, overwhelming strength, and the possibility of being possessed. As for the weapons, some of them are said to devour the hands of the user, while others give out nightmarish screams. That, my hunters, is the power of Fatalis. But then again, we'll just have to wait until the Iceborne update. Last thing to talk about is the toughness of Fatalis. How tough is Fatalis? Starting with durability, as I stated earlier, Fatalis does not have indestructible skin. Otherwise, he would literally be impossible to be harmed by anything. The only hard parts are the neck, back, wings, and tail, whereas the head, chest, arms, and legs are the soft parts. So in actuality, while his durability isn't on the lower side, it is very lackluster compared to his endurance. Excluding his immortality and regeneration factor, Fatalis has crazy endurance, only competing against Delamador. It will take more than just 6 Dragonators and 2 Demolishers to really take down Fatalis. That is why Fatalis was able to easily dominate Castle Shrade and make it his home, while also destroying the ancient civilization. Even though he didn't completely destroy them, they're just abandoned and should never be casually explored. And that's it. That's Fatalis. I know a lot of you are still mad because I didn't place Fatalis in number 1 despite him making history, but just because Fatalis made history, or is history, that doesn't necessarily mean that Fatalis is the top of everything. You may think that Fatalis dominating Shrade and destroying the ancient civilization is an achievement, right? Well, the thing is, Elatrion, Dimoralis, and Delamador could have done the same thing. It's actually not that crazy for Fatalis if you really think about it. Another thing that keeps Fatalis from hitting number 1 is the legend that connects all black dragons. The legend states that there is one particular monster that even the black dragons fear, and that monster is the ultimate life form of Monster Hunter. Yes, hunters, it is none other than Safi Jiva, the ultimate life form, and the monster that would possibly sit above all, especially against White Fatalis. We'll get to that at the end, but right now we need to focus on why Safi Jiva is number 1 in the first place. Believe it or not, Safi Jiva, or in this case, the Jiva species, has godly powers that no other monsters, not even the black dragons, possess. And that power is to absorb energy, attract other monsters to their location, shift ecosystems, and the deadliest ability of them all is to use pure concentrated dragon energy. Now you might be thinking, Safi Jiva doesn't have dragon because there's no red lightning crackling from the ground. And you are right, there is no red lightning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Safi has lost that element. The red crackling that you see from monsters like Sticking Zinogre, Ebony Odokaron, Devil Joe, Valstrax, and Narcoticus, and other monsters is just merely raw dragon. And while Xenojiva's dragon element is pure, it's still underdeveloped because Xenojiva is a juvenile and does not have any control of its powers. If you haven't noticed by now, I am bringing back the dragon element theory, given that Safi Jiva is unlike any other monster that the guild has ever witnessed. So even though Safi Jiva doesn't have the red crackling lightning, he doesn't necessarily need it because dragon is at its purest form. And because Safi Jiva has full control of his powers, every time he uses a dragon element, he does not become weakened, harmed, corrupted, or even die from it. And that's coming from an Elder Dragon that constantly fires bioenergy, whereas other monsters, and specifically Elder Dragons that harness the dragon element, go corrupt and sometimes even die from it, Safi Jiva is not affected by it whatsoever. Again, if you'd like more information, you can look in the description below, made by Josh, as I am not really great at explaining things, nor should I waste any more time to do so. So we're going to start with strength, and then we'll move to speed, toughness, and safe power for last. Safijiva can easily create a giant hole with his arm, leg, or tail, and then pull it back out with no injury or issue whatsoever. There's really nothing else for me to further explain or describe his strength, other than that he is on par with Fatalis and Dimoralis, only falling short from Delamador. So now we move on to overall speed, and despite Safijiva being the second largest flyer, he is surprisingly fast and agile. You may not believe it because Safijiva doesn't move around a lot, but you'll be really surprised when he starts charging at you. Also, when Safijiva is in the air, he moves way faster than he does on the ground. And even though Safijiva isn't a dodgy monster, he does keep his distance to avoid damage. Also, he can leap at his foes with great speed, giving them little time to react. And his mobility? Safijiva is crazy swift with his attacks, especially with the way he fires his bioenergy beams. And don't even get me started with his limb slams. No, seriously, that speed is no joke. It's not something to be laughed at. If any creature gets hit by it, they're as good as dead, no questions asked. So yes, Safijiva is incredibly fast despite his size. And now we get to overall toughness, starting with durability. Safijiva's skin is very tough and rigid. It's so tough it requires extremely sharp claws or weapons to go through it. This will cause the claws or weapons to either break or bounce off the skin unless Safijiva enters supercritical, which we will get to once we talk about power category. Safijiva's endurance is also very exceptional. You may not agree with me, but I believe that Safijiva has slightly higher endurance than Fatalis. And the reason I say that is because Safijiva has an ultimate attack that not only affects pretty much everything, humans, monsters, the environments, but it also affects him as well. So now we will go over power, and after that, I'll explain why Safijiva takes the number 1 spot. And these powers are energy absorption, monster attraction to location, ecosystem shifting, super concentrated bioenergy, and weapons and armor. Yes, weapons and armor, and I'm saving that for 4th, not last. Safijiva, or the Jiva species, are responsible for the Elder Crossing, a phenomenon that forces Elder Dragons to travel to the New World every decade. Normally, Elder Dragons go to the New World every century when they are old age and no longer capable of defending themselves. Whenever they travel to the New World, they enter the Rotten Vale, a place where Elder Dragons and other monsters go to die and transfer their energy to the Elder's Recess. But instead of occurring every 100 years, the Jiva species forces the Elder Dragons to come every 10 years. And because Safijiva has mastery of his powers, it's very possible that he can shorten the time, like from 10 years to 5 years, or 1 year or less. But how does Safijiva attract other monsters exactly? Well, he does this by simply absorbing energy, which also leads to the ecosystem to change. And since Safijiva constantly absorbs energy, the ecosystem is always being shifted. This causes the behavior of monsters to go amiss and their habitats being mixed up. And while Safijiva is absorbing energy, he is also healing himself, externally and internally. When Safijiva absorbs energy, the healing process occurs immediately, fully replenishing his wounds even if they are severe. Safijiva can also heal his limbs one by one, whether it be his head, arms, wings, torso, legs, or tail. And not only can Safijiva heal himself with energy, but he can grow even stronger to go even beyond his level. And now we will go over the gear of Safijiva along with his enraged state. And the reason I'm including the enraged state is because Safijiva is heavily similar to Fatalis. Whenever Safijiva enrages, he will target the individual that has dealt the most damage. A targeted victim will experience loud heartbeats and unsettling nightmarish screams. This will make the victim go insane and become petrified, being unable to fight back against Safijiva. And to start off with the weapons, there's really not much said about them other than being grotesque and having an awakening essence. Some of the weapons even have Some of the weapons even have eyes, making them more disturbing and potentially dangerous, which calls in for an implication. Although there's not enough information about how dangerous the weapons are, there is information about the armor. The wearer not only grants overwhelming power similar to Fatalis, but it also experiences excruciating pain and eventually death if worn for too long. So because of that, this implies that Safi'jiiva, again just like Fatalis, has immortality. It's not told or seen as much compared to Fatalis, but is more hinted than nothing else. And now, on to the last and deadliest ability of Safi'jiiva, pure concentrated bioenergy. Bioenergy can be unleashed as a beam or as explosive shock waves. The shock waves can be unleashed from the limbs, causing great destruction to the structures of the environments. The beam can obliterate anything to smithereens, especially monsters and elder dragons that are weak to dragon. Again, bioenergy contains dragon. The beam can also be thinned out to cut through pretty much anything while also causing a massive explosion. And when Safi'jiiva runs out of energy from the environment, he can restore some by using his energy so that he can keep healing himself. This is actually a theory that is just made up, and it actually makes more sense if you really think about it. Whenever Safi'jiiva slams his limbs or shoots out an explosive beam, he's not only releasing energy from the ground, but he's also transferring his own energy to the ground so that he can constantly keep healing himself. I know it sounds ridiculous, but then again, this is just a theory. Plus, Safi'jiiva's energy is just unlimited, so it kinda does make sense. And now, the ultimate attack. Safi'jiiva has an ultimate attack called the Sapphire of the Emperor that will essentially destroy basically anything that is within its radius. Okay, seriously, how can anyone still say that Fatalis or White Fatalis is still at the top of the ecosystem despite seeing that? I'm just so baffled that people just can't seem to accept that there are other monsters like Fatalis. Anyways, there's one more thing to talk about Safi'jiiva, and that is his supercritical state. Supercritical state is a form that enhances Safi'jiiva's powers, very similar to Xeno'jiiva's critical state. But unlike Xeno'jiiva that only activates it with no full control, Safi'jiiva only activates it when he feels that he is in real danger. And within that state, every strike and bite creates explosive bioenergy, making Safi'jiiva deadlier to approach. But there are two costs, and one of them is very major, as the supercritical state is both a power-up and a weakness to Safi'jiiva. Although Safi'jiiva is tough, the supercritical state softens his skin, greatly reducing his durability, with the exception of his wings. And whenever Safi'jiiva uses the Sapphire of the Emperor, he will become exhausted for brief moments. That brief moments of exhaustion isn't really bothersome to Safi'jiiva as he can quickly recover himself. But what is bothersome to Safi'jiiva is the energy depletion. Okay, that may sound like Safi'jiiva doesn't really have unlimited energy in his body, but just hear me out. Safi'jiiva doesn't necessarily lose energy in his body, but instead he loses stamina. And that's only when he gets hit too many times, gets hit by a big object, or gets stuck into something. Although energy depletion doesn't necessarily make Safi'jiiva physically or elementally weaker, it can make him exhausted and force him to regain energy again. But again, it's not really that much of an issue for Safi'jiiva because he is essentially repairing himself whenever he absorbs energy. It's just the supercritical that is a danger of him. Also again, Safi'jiiva doesn't just activate supercritical right away even when he's facing a powerful foe like the Black Dragons or Delamador. He only activates supercritical when he's being pushed to his limits. But even so, Safi'jiiva is still deadly and not very easy to take down. Now a lot of you guys would say that this is not the final form of Jiva. And I would actually agree with you because there is lore that talks about the maturity of Jiva. The lore says as the Jiva creature continues to grow, the scales will turn black and the creature will reach its final mature form. And while the lore is confirmed, for some reason Safi-Jiva is stated to be the mature form of Jiva, or specifically Xenojiva. So I don't know if there is a misconception, or if the devs completely forgot about it. Either way, there won't be a third form coming to Iceborne. But hopefully, in the final update of Iceborne, the characters will at least mention rumors about a third form of Jiva. So that is the power of Safi-Jiva. And now I will explain why I placed Safi-Jiva on number 1 and Fatalis on the runner-up. But Fatalis destroyed Castle Shrade and the ancient civilization, and that's my first reason. Guys, it doesn't matter if Fatalis did these things. If Castle Shrade and the ancient civilization were still intact, monsters like Elatrion, Dimoralis, Safi-Jiva, and Delamador would have done the same thing. And most likely, they wouldn't be intact. They would literally be almost completely destroyed by those monsters. Crimson Fatalis and White Fatalis would have done it as well, at least worse than regular Fatalis. I understand that may be part of the plot for Monster Hunter as a whole, but it still doesn't change the fact that these monsters' powers are more destructive than Fatalis' fire breath. Any of them could have taken the top in my book. My second reasoning is, Safi-Jiva can destroy the essence of Fatalis. Say what you want, but Fatalis wouldn't be able to handle the energy of pureness from Safi-Jiva. The fire breath may deal some great damage to Safi-Jiva, but given that Safi-Jiva has rigid, tough skin, Safi-Jiva can resist the world's hottest flames. And even if it deals a good chunk of damage, Safi-Jiva can simply heal himself. Fatalis can also heal as well. Yes, that is true, but it takes a while for that to happen. In comparison, Safi-Jiva's healing factor is way faster. Yeah? Well, Fatalis can regenerate his whole body with one single scale. So can Safi-Jiva, they're both immortal. But the thing is, Safi-Jiva can take away that immortality by simply disintegrating every part of Fatalis. Every part! And yes, Fatalis is very tanky, so it won't be as easy for Safi-Jiva. But then comes the Sapphire of the Emperor. That kind of power would be way too difficult for Fatalis to handle. While for Safi-Jiva, well, he can simply tolerate it even more because it's his own power. So yeah, that's essentially my second reason. My third and last reason is the connection between Safi-Jiva and the Black Dragons. There is a huge possibility that Safi-Jiva has some sort of relationship with the Black Dragons. Bear in mind that it's still being investigated by the guild. When Safi-Jiva was absorbing energy, it was catching the attention of Elatrion from the Sacred Land. When Elatrion was flying to the New World, he entered the secluded valley, the nest of Jiva. And when he got there, he started freezing the area and went on a fiery rampage in an attempt to destroy the cocoons. Why was that exactly? Well, it's possible that the cocoons may hold the energy of life. And Elatrion is said to have a hatred of living things, regardless if they're moving or not. If Elatrion senses a trace of life, he will do everything to destroy it. So that's my probable answer of why Elatrion went berserk at the secluded valley. Safi-Jiva's energy absorption may also have connections with the awakening and the return of Fatalis. Yes, I know this may be a theory and Fatalis can return to Shrade at any moment, but just remember that the arrival of Elatrion was very recent and unnatural. If Fatalis had woken up sooner, he would have flown to the New World along with Elatrion, causing havoc to the New World while simultaneously battling Safi-Jiva and each other. Whether I am correct or wrong, we'll just have to wait and see for the update to come out. And these are my reasonings of why Safi-Jiva is more powerful than Fatalis and takes first place. But, how powerful is Safi-Jiva when competing against Crimson Fatalis and White Fatalis? I'm sure you guys would like to know my answer, but I have to stop right here because I don't want to make the video any longer than it has to be. I'll probably make a separate video of it, although it won't be very soon, but I'll probably make it before Monster Hunter Rise comes out. But as of now, this concludes my top 10 most powerful Elder Dragons list. I hope you guys liked and enjoyed the video despite the choices that I made. It really was not easy to make considering the lore, the veterans of Monster Hunter, and society as a whole. It sucks that nowadays people can't seem to have civil normal conversations and stick to whatever they believe and claim that they're always right. We as humanary beings have become more corrupted than we were in the past, and we can't seem to listen to each other or ourselves. And it really is a huge shame because as time keeps passing by, it will keep getting worse and worser. Before I end this video, there are some things I'd like to address because I forgot to bring them up during the list. Number 1 being the horns of Elatrion. When Elatrion enters Dragon Active mode, his horns become more breakable. Whether if it's a gameplay mechanic thing or a lore thing is up to debate, but regardless, I still feel like I have to bring it up. When the horns do break, it prevents Elatrion from shifting into another active mode. Whether that's beneficial or not depends on the elemental monster that Elatrion faces. Speaking of elemental monster, we now hit the second point that I missed. Fatalis vs Elatrion. Even though Elatrion is an immortal, he can still put up a good fight against Fatalis. But the issue is how he enters a fight, whether if he starts with Fire Active mode or Ice Active mode. If Elatrion starts out in Fire Active mode, it would give him a huge advantage, as Fatalis cannot fight fire against fire to disable Elatrion. But if Elatrion starts out using Ice Active mode, he would be easily incinerated by the breath of Fatalis. But just remember that Elatrion is way too fast for Fatalis to hit. And also, it doesn't just take one hit of fire to mitigate the Escadar Judgment. So regardless of what mode Elatrion enters, Fatalis will still have a difficult time hitting Elatrion because he moves way too fast. And because of that, Elatrion will hit Fatalis with a full-powered Escadar Judgment, which will either kill him or knock him out cold. But one thing for sure, Fatalis could surprise Elatrion with an ambush. If Elatrion shifts to Ice Active mode, Fatalis will hit him with a Fire Breath, not only incinerating Elatrion, but also disabling him. This will give Fatalis a finishing blow, by simply roasting Elatrion to ashes, and that is why I placed Fatalis on number 2 and Elatrion on number 3. And one more thing about Fatalis scaring every creature legend, which comes from the final update trailer. For the people that saw the trailer, there is a glimpse of wingdrakes at Castle Schwade flying away. And a lot of you guys would go out and say, "See, Fatalis does have that power! You were wrong!" Guys, I hate to break it to you, but they were already near Fatalis. When Fatalis was emerging, they started freaking out because the castle was shaking. So, nice try, but it does nothing to help your argument. So that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more future videos. Also share with your friends, and if there's anything else that I missed, let me know in the comments below. Don't get into riots, don't do gender reveal parties, don't harass people based on what they believe, and as always, stay safe.